To age or not to age? That, my friends, is the big cigar storage question for the day. One that, here momentarily, we shall be answering for you. But before we get into the big discussion about how long to age a cigar or best ways to age certain cigar blends, let me make mention that this kind of product arrives ready to smoke. Like many fermented products on the shelf that are ready for purchase, premium cigar blends are something that are intended to be consumed immediately if you wish. However, unlike that block of extra sharp cheddar cheese or tub of miso that you plan on putting in your fridge, premium cigar blends are a bit unique in that they really can be set down for a certain amount of time in a controlled environment, like a bottle of wine or even a very high proof bottle of beer, and improve with age. This leads us briefly to the topic of what kinds of cigars age best. While there is no exact formula as for which type of cigar is going to provide you personally with the best heavily aged smoking experience, a good rule of thumb is to treat cigars the way you would wine or beer. It is typically best to think of lighter colored cigars or milder cigars as the lagers or IPAs or wheat beers of the world. These types of smokes are best consumed right upon purchase and do not age very well because of their delicate nature. And by delicate, I mean not just flavor profiles, but also the wrappers themselves, especially on Connecticut shade varietals. Unlike a Connecticut broadleaf, for instance, or a San Andres Maduro, shade-grown cigars typically are very silky to the touch and ergo are much more delicate. So when you're rotating them time and time again, year after year, the chance of that wrapper getting cracked or getting a little bit of a scuff along the way increases each time you move that stogie around. And while the physical risks associated with storing a cigar that is delicate in nature for a prolonged period of time cannot be ignored, it is actually the aromatics and flavor profiles of this cigar that can diminish faster than you would think. While there is no set time frame for how long tobacco is aged and fermented prior to production, a general synopsis of what goes into the aging process post-production ranges anywhere from a month, 2 months, upwards to a year, but rarely past that. Furthermore, a cigar does sit around in a humidor at a brick and mortar or in the Klaro warehouse for another prolonged period of time, however much that may be, until you, the consumer, pick it up. This time frame could range anywhere, once again, from a few months to a couple of years, depending on how quickly a product moves. So for something that is lighter in color and more delicate upon the palate, that point of diminishing return will be reached far faster than you might think because the cigar's already been heavily aged when you pick it up off the shelf. Now, that's not to say that the same thing will not or cannot happen to fuller flavored, fuller bodied cigars, because they too, over time, will eventually turn into dust, just like the rest of us. But because stronger flavored cigars are so much more robust in nature, the aging process takes a bit longer typically for them to get to the point where they start tasting like cardboard, for instance. Speaking of cardboard, this is one of the most common flavor profiles that I pick up on when it comes to a cigar that is quote unquote past its prime. That and paper, really stale paper, not the wonderful aromatic stuff that you get in a vintage bookshop, but just old leaflets of newspapers sitting around molding somewhere, turning to dust. However, that's not to say that every single cigar blend on the shelf is going to turn into something super bland after a year, 2, or 5 years of aging. In fact, some of my favorite cigars that I've smoked in my lifetime have sat in my humidor for a couple of years oftentimes and mellowed out a bit. So if you want to try your hand at aging a cigar for a prolonged or additional period of time, note that you need to start with a humidor that is properly calibrated and seasoned fully. Just like a well-designed wine cellar deep underground, cigar humidors are crucial to guaranteeing that the stogies inside are kept at the optimum humidity and temperature year-round. Furthermore, it is up to you, the cigar smoker, to rotate those stogies inside your humidor on a weekly basis at the very least. Routine rotation guarantees that premium cigars are exposed to an even amount of humidity within the humidor, as well as the Spanish cedar lining that many of them are made from. Not only does a weekly rotation help more evenly distribute humidity inside the humidor, but it also gives you the opportunity to take a cigar out, give it a look, and determine whether it's ready for smoking. And then finally, there is the topic of aging a variety of different cigars in a single humidor. While there is nothing wrong with throwing a handful of stogies or the random bundle of different blends into the same humidor and letting them sit and rotate for about a year, anywhere beyond that is running the risk of darker cigar flavor profiles in general seeping into their lighter shade-grown neighbors next door. While it may not affect the flavor and aromatic profile of the cigar that is on the lighter side as much as one might think, throwing a cigar that has, for instance, Kentucky fire-cured tobacco in it right next to something that's very light and delicate and buttery is definitely going to influence that milder smoke over time. Being that the unlit impressions and aromatics that come along with them are one of the most pleasurable parts of the entire cigar smoking experience, it is very important to set cigars aside and section them up into different humidors, or at least put partitions in place inside of larger humidors so that, once again, you don't have something on the stronger side influencing the unlit impressions of a milder smoke. Here at Klaro, our bit of advice is a really simple one, and that is to pick up a 5-pack of a medium-bodied, medium-strength, and fuller flavored cigar that appeals to you, and then smoke one fresh, age one for a couple of months, smoke it again, then age another one, and just keep going from there. And eventually you will end up with one final cigar that has been sitting in your humidor for well over a year, and that will help you determine whether or not the aging process has been worth it. And while there is a certain level of risk associated with this little experiment of yours, note that chances are, as long as you rotate those cigars properly and keep that humidity where it should and take good care of your humidor, you will be rewarded with a smoother smoking experience over time, and perhaps some subtler nuances that couldn't be detected when the cigars were fresh out the cellophane.